In all of the examples so far, we've been using something called constructor injection, and that is the idea that all the dependencies of a component are specified in the constructor. So for example, if a car depends on something, all that it depends on is specified as a set of constructor arguments, and this is where the container actually specifies those arguments by providing them to the car. So the car requires an engine and also a log, so the container goes off looking for registrations which give it an engine or give it an ilog, and if an engine requires an ilog as well, it gives it that, and so on, and it kind of fills it in recursively. Now we're going to look at something somewhat different, which is the idea of injecting dependencies, not using the constructor, by using properties or by having special methods which actually perform the same thing. So for this, I'm going to do a different scenario. So instead of doing the kind of stuff that we've been doing so far, I'm going to basically build a very simple two-component dependency. So I'm going to have a child and parent. Nothing particularly magical about this. So we'll have a class called parent, and we'll have a toString implementation for parent. So I will override a toString here, and we're going to just return, well, I am your father, like this, and then I will have the child class, so class child, and the child might have a name. They might also have a public parent property. So we'll put a getter and a setter here, and we'll also, well, at the moment we're actually going to keep it as is. So the idea is that we don't have a constructor on child, and yet at the same time we want to assign the parent of this child correctly. So the question is, how do we do it using the dependency injection framework that we're working with? So it's actually not that difficult. So first of all, we make the container builder as before, and then we register the parent. Now the parent doesn't have any dependencies, so there is no problem here. The problem is with registering the child, because unfortunately if we do decide to register type child like this, what's going to happen is we're not going to be able to get the child's parent, meaning that, for example, if I were to say var container equals builder.build, and then I go ahead and I resolve the child, so I say var child equals, well, actually, let's get the parent straight away. Var parent equals container.resolve. We get the child like so, and we try to get the parent, for example, and then maybe right line the parent. This isn't going to work. So if I execute this, you'll see that it simply crashes because, well, it doesn't crash, but it doesn't give us any value. Now, why doesn't it give us any value? Well, the reason is that when you get the parent value is actually null. It's a property which is reference type, so it's null by default. So you right line a null, which gives you absolutely nothing. So not very nice. We want some way of assigning this property whenever you actually resolve the type child. So that is the challenge here. Now there are different ways, once again, of doing this. One of those is to let the container just do everything automatically, and this is done using something called properties autowired. So you say properties autowired, and that's pretty much it. So the idea of this approach is that the system will go through every single property and try to resolve it, and that's it. So let's execute this. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we get I am your father, because what essentially happened is the system found the property of type parent, and it injected the appropriate thing. So this is one approach. Another approach is to specifically provide the name. So here, just like in the previous example where we had named arguments to the constructor, we're going to say the following. We're going to say builder.register type child, like so, and then we can say with property. And we can make a property. Well, we can either specify an entire parameter. Let me show you the completion listing here again. We can specify either the parameter, or we can specify a string for the property name followed by the property value. So here I can specify that the name of the property is called parent, and the actual value is going to be, let's say, new parent. So here I'm constructing a parent out of nothing, almost. So it's going to be a parent which we construct and which we provide for each of the children. And once again, this is going to work just fine. Okay, so this is property injection. You basically, if you have just one property to wire up, this is fine. Now, you can also do something called method injection. Now, method injection basically means that you provide some sort of method which is used to assign a particular dependency. So in the example of a child and parent, you might have a method like the following. So you might have something like setParent, which actually takes a parent. So this method might take a parent, and then it says parent equals parent. It might be doing something more complicated in this method. The point is we want this method to be invoked whenever somebody actually tries to register something. So let me comment this out. Now, the way this is done is as follows. So here's what we do. We still register, but instead of registering type, we just call register. So builder.register, and here we provide a lambda. So here we take the iComponent context and we provide this big lambda, which defines essentially what's happening as you kind of try to get something. So here I can say var child equals new child. This is what I'm going to return. And then I can do child dot set parent. Now the interesting thing here is that I have the context. And because I have the context, I can say c.resolve and resolve the parent, like so. So anytime somebody wants a child, I actually use the container to resolve a new instance of parent. I can assign it using this particular method, the method setParent, and then I can return the child. All right, so hopefully it's obvious to you what's actually going on here. So we're registering a component, but we're registering it in such a way that whenever it's created, in addition to it just being created and returned, it also assigns a particular property by calling a particular method. So this is method injection. And if you cannot use a registration lambda, like the one that I've defined here, you can use something called an activating event handler. So let me show you how that works. So basically you say builder.register type child, like so, and then you say onActivated. So essentially what you're doing here is you're providing an event handler which is going to be fired whenever somebody actually tries to get a child. And here, once again, it's also a lambda with a context. Here you do a similar thing. So you can say, for example, get the parent. So var p equals e dot context. So this time e is not the iComponent context. Let's actually take a look at what e is. So I'm going to insert the signature here. So you can see it's an iActivated event args of child, and you can get the context here, which is an iComponent context, and here you can resolve the parent like so, and then you can once again take e, and the context contains everything. So essentially somebody is activating an instance of the child, so they have created an instance and they're working with it instead of us having to write the constructor and us having to return something from a lambda. Somebody has created a child behind the scenes, and all we have to do is call this particular method on it. So you basically get the parent by taking the context and doing a resolve on the parent, and then you take the child that's being built up, which is e.instance, and you say e.instance.setParent and provide the argument p. And this is how you use a not a registration lambda. This is how you use an activating event handler. Now let's actually run this. Let's see what we get. As you can see, we're getting pretty much the same thing that we had before.